Think of the most degenerate, over-the-top, money-hungry city on Earth today, a place where absolutely anything goes if you have enough cash. 2,500 years ago, that city was Babylon. If you grew up going to Sunday school or just paying attention to pop culture, you know the name. It's the ultimate symbol of human arrogance. The Whore of Babylon, the city of sin, the place that built the Tower of Babel to challenge God, only to be cursed forever. But here is the mind-blowing truth. Almost everything you think you know about Babylon is a 2,500-year-old smear campaign. It's the most successful piece of ancient propaganda in human history. Babylon wasn't just a den of thieves and cults, it was the New York, the Silicon Valley, and the Washington, D.C. of the ancient world, all rolled into one. It was a mega city of 200,000 people living in a level of luxury that wouldn't be seen again for over 1,000 years. Today, we are going to strip away the biblical myths and the Greek rumors. We're going to walk the streets of the real Babylon. And by the end of this video, you'll realize why the ghost of this city still controls how you live your life today. Seriously, you're using Babylonian tech right now. Let's dig in. To understand Babylon at its peak, we need to travel back to the 6th century BC during the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar II. This guy was the ultimate builder. He took a city that had been repeatedly destroyed and turned it into the crown jewel of the Middle East. Imagine you are an ancient merchant or a traveler. You've spent months walking through beige, dusty, brutal deserts. You are exhausted, starving, and sunburned. Then the dust clears on the horizon, and you see it. The walls of Babylon. The Greek historian Herodotus claimed these walls were 300 feet high and 80 feet thick. Now, Herodotus loved to exaggerate. He was basically the ancient world's clickbait journalist. But modern archaeologists have dug up the foundations, and the truth is still staggering. The outer walls were so thick that you could drive 2 4-horse chariots side by side along the top, pass each other, and still have room to spare. It was a massive, impenetrable ring of baked mud bricks stretching for miles. But the real shock value came when you reached the main entrance, the Ishtar Gate. In a world where everything was brown, gray, and tan, the Babylonians had figured out how to glaze bricks in brilliant electric blue. It looked like they had literally built a gate out of solid lapis lazuli. It was covered in hundreds of glowing golden reliefs of lions, bulls, and a terrifying mythological dragon called the Mushkushu. This wasn't just architecture, this was a psychological weapon. It was Nebuchadnezzar's way of saying, we have infinite money, we have the gods on our side, and you are nothing. The ultimate ancient flex. Once you passed through those gates, you were on the processional way, a massive paved boulevard that cut straight to the heart of the city. Babylon was loud. It smelled like roasting meat, raw sewage, exotic frankincense, and unwashed bodies. It was a melting pot. Because Babylon was the center of global trade, you had Egyptians, Persians, Greeks, and Elamites all rubbing shoulders, trading spices, slaves, and silk. And unlike the chaotic, winding streets of medieval Europe that would come 1,000 years later, Babylon was built on a grid system. It had distinct neighborhoods, a massive commercial district, and a complex irrigation system fed by the Euphrates River, which ran right through the middle of the city. But if you looked up, one structure dominated the skyline. You know the story of the Tower of Babel? The arrogant humans who tried to build a tower to heaven, so God scrambled their languages? Well, that story was directly inspired by a real building. It was called the Etemenanki, which literally translates to the Temple of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth. It was a massive 7-story ziggurat dedicated to Marduk, the patron god of Babylon. It stood nearly 300 feet tall. To a nomadic goat herder wandering in from the desert, a 300-foot-tall skyscraper made of millions of baked bricks wouldn't just look impressive, it would look like witchcraft. It would look terrifying. So, if Babylon was such a masterpiece of urban planning and engineering, why does it have the absolute worst reputation in human history? Why is it the city of sin? Well, it all comes down to who writes the history books. And in Babylon's case, their history was written by their worst enemies. In 587 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem. He burned the Temple of Solomon to the ground, and he dragged thousands of the Jewish elite back to Babylon as captives. This is known as the Babylonian exile. Imagine your homeland is destroyed and you are dragged to a terrifying, massive, loud foreign mega city where people worship giant statues of dragons and practice foreign rituals. You would hate it too. The Hebrew scribes wrote down their experiences, and those texts eventually became the Old Testament of the Bible. Babylon became the eternal symbol of evil, greed, and oppression. It was the ultimate PR disaster for the Babylonians. And then, the Greeks piled on. Herodotus wrote that in Babylon, every single woman was forced to go to the temple of Ishtar at least once in her life and sleep with a total stranger for money to honor the goddess. Sounds like a crazy, sinful city, right? Yeah, modern historians are pretty confident Herodotus completely made that up. It was ancient Greek clickbait to make the Easterners look like weird, hypersexual barbarians. The reality was much more boring, but honestly, way more impressive. The real religion of Babylon was business. Forget the sex cults. Babylon was the Wall Street of antiquity. They were obsessed with contracts. We have dug up tens of thousands of clay tablets, and you know what most of them are? Receipts, real estate deeds, loan agreements with compound interest, prenuptial agreements. They had a highly complex legal system based on the Code of Hammurabi. If you bought a piece of land, you got a clay tablet stamped with a cylinder seal. Basically, the ancient version of a blockchain verifying your transaction. But their greatest legacy wasn't money, it was science. The Babylonians were absolute math nerds. They mapped the night sky with terrifying accuracy. They could predict solar eclipses centuries before the Greeks even figured out what an eclipse was. And remember how I said you are using Babylonian tech right now? They used a base 60 mathematical system. Why are there 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour? Why are there 360 degrees in a circle? That is 100% Babylonian. Every time you look at your watch, you are using math that was invented in the shadow of the Tower of Babel. Let that sink in. But no empire lasts forever, and for all its massive, impenetrable walls, Babylon didn't fall to a brutal siege. It was taken by a clever trick. In 539 BC, Cyrus the Great of Persia marched on the city. He knew he couldn't break through those 80-foot thick walls, but he noticed a massive vulnerability. The Euphrates River ran right under the city walls. While the Babylonians were inside throwing a massive religious festival, completely drunk and partying, Cyrus had his engineers dig canals upstream. He diverted the mighty river. The water level dropped until it was only thigh-high. In the dead of night, the Persian army literally waded under the impenetrable walls through the muddy riverbed. They walked right into the city. Babylon fell without a major battle. The greatest fortress on earth was bypassed by a plumbing trick. The city survived under the Persians, and Alexander the Great even planned to make it the capital of his world empire. But he died right there in Nebuchadnezzar's palace. After that, Babylon was slowly abandoned. Because it was built of mud brick instead of stone, it didn't leave behind romantic ruins like Rome or Greece. Without humans to maintain the irrigation and bake new bricks, the megacity simply melted back into the earth. For thousands of years, the greatest city on earth was nothing more than a series of strange, dusty hills in the Iraqi desert. Babylon wasn't a fairy tale, and it wasn't just a metaphor for human sin. It was a real, breathing, dirty, magnificent megacity. It was the peak of human achievement in its time. It teaches us a pretty humbling lesson. You can build walls 80 feet thick. You can pave your streets with lapis lazuli and invent the math that measures time itself. But eventually, time always wins. The empire of gold will always return to dust. The next time you look at a modern skyline, just remember, they thought their city would last forever too. If you want to see how another massive, arrogant empire collapsed overnight, click the video right here on your screen where we break down exactly what happened during the last 24 hours of Pompeii. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more history that they didn't teach you in school. See you in the next one.